included Bali Yatra. Those who are from Odisha or those who, if you will ever Google Bali Yatra, you will know the travelers or the sailors of Odisha, they used to travel to Indonesia, Java, Sumatra. The destination of Kalinga is mentioned in Rig Veda and Mahabharata. The Kalinga kingdom or Kalinga empire was mentioned during time, Buddhism was introduced to Kalinga during the time of Lord Buddha in the 6th century BC. The great war between King Asoka was the turning point in the history of Kalinga, because after this war, which was fought at the bank of Daya river, he embraced Buddhism. And after he embraced Buddhism, there are many hypotheses. Many historians say it was the massacre of the Brahmins. Many hypotheses, many historians say there are other philosophies. Anyway, coming back to the history that we have with us. So after this war, he embraces Buddhism and he became Dharmasok from Chandasok, and that started the development of Buddhist art or architecture in South Asia, including Kalinga. Because when a king embraces Buddhism or any religion, that becomes the religion of the state. And the successor rulers, they were Jain. So under the royal patronage of Lord Asoka, his successors, both Buddhist architecture and Jain architecture flourished in the subcontinent, including in the eastern part of the India, that is the Kalinga region. Here we could see the remainings of Asokan edifice, which is at Dhauli, that is the same site adjacent to which the Kalinga war was fought. Also we have few remainings of Khandagiri, Lalitgiri, Udayagiri and Ratnagiri. These are few remainings or few of the existing cave architecture. This shows the glorious architecture of cave architecture which was built around 2000 years back. These all are adjacent to the site of Bhubaneswar or the eastern part of Odisha. Here we could see the articulated structure of rock architecture or rock art architecture. Now, Sir was saying about, Pandey sir was saying about the three cults. Around 5th century AD, that this is a time of revival of Hinduism. Many historians say it's Brahminical Hinduism, many historians say it's a different thing. But Hinduism revived in the subcontinent, including the Kalinga region around 5th century, and during this period, three sects of Hinduism was revived, or the three sects of temples was revived in Kalinga region. First was on Saivaism, second one is Shaktiism, and third one is the Saivaism. So why I am saying these three sects in this order, there is a reason to it. I will explain this in coming slides. So around 7th century, Somavansis, they shifted their capital from Kosal to Kalinga, Ekamrakhetram. And when they shifted their capital from Kosal, which is the western Odisha, to the Ekamrakhetra, that time when Ekamrakhetra became the capital of Odisha, during this period, a distinct type of Kalinga architecture was flourished at Ekamrakhetra for 700 years. Now, this is just for your understanding, KSUB is there for 120 years. And in this 120 years, different students came from different parts of the world, different parts of the India. They are here studying for 4 or 5 years. They are learning different ways of, different theories related to different disciplines. The same thing was happening at this site. Okay, I will come to that part. So here you could see a lot of temple sites are located in the eastern part. So traditionally, this eastern part has been the cultural, social, and administrative, commercial capital of Kalinga for last 2000 years. This is why this rich Kalinga architecture is flourished in the eastern part. Also in the western part we have Samalai temple, we have other temples, but here in this lecture we will be focusing on the eastern part of the Odisha. Now, I was saying that this Ekamrakhetra, which is presently called Bhubaneswar, this is the site where this great Kalinga war was fought, and after which this Asoka embraces Buddhism. And this Ekamra site, this was a famous site for Kalinga school for 700 years, that is from 7th century CE to 13th century CE. Unlike the northern area which was invaded around 11th century CE, Kalinga enjoyed her immunity or sovereignty till 13th century. And this Kalinga architecture flourished in two phases. The early phases were preliminary, in the early phases temples were bit smaller in size, less decorated, although they are rich in architecture. In the later period, it was more gigantic and more ornamented. Now, we need to see this sketch. Just like in your faculty of arts, students are coming, maybe in the sculpture department, they are working on different models, different scale models. They are making 1:200 scale model of some sculpture. And once they are convinced, once the teacher is convinced, they could make a 1:1 model. The same thing was happening. So teachers, the different students, they were learning how to build a temple. This was a school for Kalinga architecture for 700 years. Now just imagine 120 into 5 or 6. It was that strong. And this is the final product that you could see. And people came from Pakistan, Gandhar region. People used to come from that part also. We have a lot of remains that I could show here. So little later, 3 different distinct forms of architecture was flourished here. First is the Rekha Deval, or the linear one. The great Kalinga temple, which is a classic example of Nagar style temple, the northern temples. This is the classic example of this Rekha Deval. Second one is the Pidha Deval, it's a pyramidal temple. The great Konark temple is an example of this temple. And this is one of the unique type of Khakra Deval, or this temple represents amalgamation of northern architecture and southern architecture. Here you could see 3 sikharas, a truncated roof. This is not a common element in the northern temples or Nagar temples. So people came here from different areas, they learned how to build temples on the temple architecture flourished here. Now, let us dive into what was the initial temples were looking like. This is the Parsurameswar temple which was built by the Somavansis around 8th century. Here you could see there are representation of different sects. So in Ekamra Purana it is said around 8th century or 9th century at the bank of Ganga River it's now become a canal, Nala just like this Asi Nala. There was war, fearsome war between Saiva, Daitya and Asura. So in that the Daityas were the Saivites and Asuras were the Buddhists. But here we could see in the earlier temple there were cultural representation of different sects. So this was the early approach of Kalinga temple. Now, again, a few more images of this early Kalinga temple. Here you could see this was the original temple, and this structure, I could say, a hall was added later. We need to understand, king was funding this temple, and king, bureaucrats, nobles, they used to come to offer their pilgrimage or their prayer. And Odisha is a place which experiences extensive period of monsoon for 6 months, and the temperature goes 40-45 degrees. So for their comfort, in the later period, a temporary shade, or I would say shade, was created. And if you see the articulation of this one is completely different than articulation of this structure. Anyway, we could discuss that sometime other. So a cross section of this early Kalinga temple, you could see there is one Garbhagriha, one Mandapa. Now, let's come to the later part, later Kalinga temple, which was built around 12th to 14th century. There are a lot of hypotheses. This is a time when this land was ruled by the Saivas or Vaishnavas. Buddhism was there in the rural sites. Maybe it was diminishing in the rural sites. So some historians now, this is called Gajapati. The king of Odisha is called Gajapati. The person who rules Gaja means elephant. According to some historians, this image that you will find in the later Kalinga temples, maybe in Lingaraj temple, maybe in the Jagannath temple, you will find a lion and elephant. For some historians, this is the victory of Hinduism over Buddhism. Again, this could be debated. History is all about interpretation. We don't have any direct proof. For some other people, it was built by some Gajapati. And Gajapati means, the Pati means ruler, Gaja means elephant. Here, this is Gaja, and this represents the supremacy. Anyway, this is a very symbolic element that is found in the later Kalinga temple. The later Kalinga temple, which was flourished around 12th century, these were gigantic, more elaborated, more decorated. This Lingaraj temple is a classic example of later Kalinga temple. Here you could say Garbhagriha, Jagamahan, Natamanda, and Bhogamanda. There are 4 chambers. We believe our God, he just lives like us. He wakes up in the morning, then he has breakfast, then many people come, they express their desires, their worry, he listens, he has his food. This is the Bhogamanda, this is Natamanda, where he has his entertainment. There would be some Devdasi performing dance or performing some music. There would be a group of bhakts who would be chanting some prayers. There is another mandap, Jagamohan. And if you see, this is really interesting to understand. This is a classic example of Nagara temple. Unfortunately, okay, Odisha is not in north. But temple of Odisha is considered as the classic example of Nagara temple. There is another temple, Kanderia Mahadev, in Madhya Pradesh. That is another classic example of northern temple or Nagara temple. We don't have any classic temple of Nagara temples in UP or Bihar or maybe Himachal Pradesh, or you could call Punjab, Haryana. There are a lot of reasons to that, we won't go there. Now, what these temples are doing? Just like if I go somewhere, I will take a photo, I will share the photo with my in WhatsApp or Facebook, and I will say, okay, I had a good lunch. Just like sharing information in social media. The same thing was happening that time. Everything that you see on the facades of temples are not religious. We need to understand there is some artist who is working for the construction of temple for 12 years, 20 years, 25 years. And that artist might be remembering like how he moved with his family or with his brother or son from his village to this Ekam state. Here you could see luggages. The current luggages that we see, VIP or American travel, whatever it is. The same thing. It is from the facade of the Mukteswar temple, the gem of Kalinga architecture, which was built around 8th century. Here you could see there is some artist or Maharana. He might be remembering his wife, maybe her lover, his lover. He might be thinking like my beloved lover is waiting for me near the door. There is a parrot, and he might be expressing, oh parrot, please go and express my thoughts to my lover. Here you could see there is a guru or a father who is teaching his son or his student how to work on different materials. So everything that you see in the facades of a temple is not religious. It's mostly storytelling. This facade says a lot about what was happening that time. And this is a very unique piece of art or unique piece of information. Now, let us see some more details. We have three types of temple, or Nagara temple, Sikhari, Bhumija, or Latina. We won't discuss all these things here because it will take much time. But this is a classic example of Sikhari, where you have a lot of small Sikhars. This is a Bhumija, and this is called Triratha because it has three edges, edge 1, edge 2, edge 3, and Pancha Bhumi, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, if somebody is interested, there are a lot of information available. Now, I want you to focus at this image. A typical Odia face looks like this, circle. But here, you will find long beard, long hair. This is not a typical Odia face. And this is from the facade of the Sikhara of the Lingaraj temple. Here you could see a lot of people with very narrow body, long hair, long facial hair, they are worshipping. This might explain like there was a bunch of people, bunch of Karigar who came from the Gandhar region. Gandhar was the present day Pakistan, Afghanistan. That area that we say Pakistan, Afghanistan is very contemporary, only 75 years. 1000 years back that was part of India. So there is a bunch of people who came from different areas, they were doing some rituals. Also you could see the beautiful intricate detailing which is joined or combined with line. Now few other detailings. This is the unique Kalinga art which was flourished around the 2nd century to 3rd century CE. So I won't discuss much here, all this Kalinga art. Now let's go back, go to 14th century. After Odisha was captured, it was invaded by Afghan or Mughal. During that time, that was a time of Bhakti movement. There were, in order to bring universality or brotherhood, many gurus, you name it Sri Chaitanya, you name it Guru Nanak, they visited different parts of the country, including this site. So for their comfortable stay, a lot of mortars were built around 16th century. Unfortunately, some of these mortars were demolished by the government of Odisha in 2016 for Navakalal work. This is a real tragedy, but it was required. So here you could see this kind of that those who are from Odisha, they know this is the chaura or the base that we have for Tulsi. This is a Kalinga art, architecture, a Kalinga order. We might understand the in Greco-Roman architecture, there are in the front there are few columns, very decorated columns. But this is a traditional Kalinga column, a Kalinga order, I could say. This is an amalgamation of Kalinga art architecture with some northern elements from Bengal or the northern part of the country. I will go to that in the coming slides. Now, this is the architecture of the temple sites. Now, let's go back to this image where you know this is the Cart festival of Rath Yatra. Rath Yatra is celebrated for last 800 or 900 years, maybe 1000 years. I am talking about the recorded history. So here you could see this is celebrated in the month of June or July, which is a early monsoon time, and you will find a lot of shaded, temporary shadeds which are created for the comfortable stay of the king, the noble, bureaucrats, because it is a monsoon time. So same thing might have happened. People might have created projected balconies so that from here somebody could see the Jagannath temple. We need to understand till 1932 not everybody was allowed to go inside the Jagannath temple. It was changed in 1932 or 1925. I might be wrong here, but that is the timeline. And for a bhakt, there are so many bhakts. For them, the view of the Jagannath temple is sacrosanct, who were not allowed to go inside. For that was also valid for Bhakta Salavika. Now, around 18th century, when Odisha was ruled by the British, or before that Mughal, they brought this Bengali Babus, or Banglo culture, Babu culture, bureaucrats from Bengal to Odisha. And for their comfortable stay, this Banglo architecture or Babu culture was built here. Here you will find this amalgamation of Odisha art architecture with some Bengali architectural element and northern architectural element. But focus at this element. Many people say multi-sector arts is from Persia. But this is not a typical multi-sector arts, whereas you will find a colors here, you will find two parrots here, you will find an elephant here. This is a traditional element that you will find in many villages. If you go to some village in Odisha, you will find some chora where people will be playing cards, they will be doing chit-chat, and there will be one toran or one arch. So the same element is later used integral part of this architecture. Now, when British came in 19th century, they were busy in ruling the land. So they were least bothered about the religious temple. Obviously, the reason was very obvious. So during this time, they built a lot of administrative buildings. This Revensa College, Odisha High Court, Christ College, and few other structures in the Indo-Saracenic or colonial architecture. It was very little to do with the architecture of this land. Now, post-independence, Bhubaneswar could be the first planned city or second planned city, depending upon the theory that we buy. Anyway, Bhubaneswar was planned by Otto Koenigsberg, and after that is the time of secular regime, which was good in theory. So the then CM Bhartwari Mahata and the other architect Julius Vaz, they thought we will go for secular architecture. We are done with the religious architecture or opulence of the state. Let's focus on the minimalism. Of course, we will receive very little funding compared to Chandigarh. No complaint about that. But so this is why very minimal architecture with small settings are done. These are all the public buildings or administrative buildings of Bhubaneswar which were built around 1950s. And this is actually a piece of art. When the ruler of this area, or the bureaucrats of the area, they thought, let's move ahead with the time, let's make secular building with minimal or rational architectural elements, shading devices, because this area receives a lot of rainfall, this area receives a lot of sunlight. Around 1990s, just like any other places, Tier 2 city, Bhubaneswar received some fundings. In the early 2000s, this area started constructing this modern architecture. Here modern architecture, this is this Fortune Tower and this, the other one is the XIMB. Here this application of glass was started. It was the early expression of glass in this Bhubaneswar, the capital city. And for the last 15 years, this is postmodernism. Postmodernism is borrowing some original elements and using these original elements in the contemporary buildings. In a place like Puri or Old Town Bhubaneswar, we will find this kind of architecture which where stone is used extensively. Stone, laterite stone is a symbolic material in Odisha because all the temples have been built with stone, all in line. This is why all the public buildings, the architecture has evolved. Few more expressions. This was the Krusi Bhavan, it was highly cited worldwide. And this represents the culture, the Sadi culture of Western Odisha. And here you could see few more ornamentations. So this is the brief journey of architecture. Now let's come to how the temple site has evolved. Because temple site was a small site. There is a road called Mishra Sahib road just in front of the Jagannath temple. This was the image in 1890 and this is the image in 2020 or 2024. Here you could say this is a small site with small usually choice. Now ask around 20th century when Britishers connected Odisha with Kolkata, or I could say Kolkata, Madras railways, the number of tourists increased. So later the single story building becomes double story become triple story, and now you see a lot of open areas, lot of visual nuisance which are present at this site. Somehow it is diffusing or diluting the visibility of this Jagannath temple Sikhar. Now few more images just to say what was the traditional architecture of the peasants or the working class in Odisha. Mr. Sir might agree with me that traditional architecture, if somebody is not Jamidar, his house was looking something like this. But the current architecture of Bhubaneswar or Cuttack or Puri, something is like this. This is that you will same find in Banaras. The traditional architecture of any place has replaced with the contemporary architecture of 3 to 4 floors, where the ground floor is used for commercial activities, the upper floors are used for residential. I am just showing the plan. Initially, no Odisha house there was a toilet. Toilet was a bit far away, but of course this is the change of time we need to understand and how the houses of this place has changed. Sorry. Now, there is a threat for us. Threat to this place. In the earlier 20th century, these are the low-lying structures where this is the Bordanda, and people used to come from different parts of the world or different parts of the Odisha to have a view of the Sikhar or this Sikhar. But what is happening right now? This haphazard construction around this Jagannath main Sikhar. A person of my height, I mean, if I am standing here near this Border Medical Junction, which is the entry point to this Bordand, maybe if this haphazard construction is not controlled here, in few years, this temple visibility is lost. If though we are, I think most of us are from KSUB, you know, here no structure is allowed taller than Vishwanath temple. If you ever go to Paris, no structure is allowed to block the view of the Eiffel Tower. Unfortunately, we have not able to manage this kind of rules here. And this view, this Sikhar is sacrosanct, the Nila Chakra is sacrosanct. But this has to be administered or managed by the local authorities. Now let's come into the architecture elements. You will find an array of different architectural elements, the multi-sector arts which are genuine or original to this place. There are few elements which are borrowed from here and there. Unfortunately, what is happening due to modernization, all these traditional arches are replaced with these simple circular arts or rectangular openings, which might lose its own originality. I mean, I could give you one example. There is a place here, Chachi Ka Dukan, Chachi Ki Kachori. If you go a little towards this Durga Kund, you will find a very beautiful building which is having a lot of brick texture without plaster. Maybe in a span of 5 or 10 years, that structure might become a mall. That architecture represents Banaras. So this same thing is happening here also. The traditional architecture of this place, which is there for last 800 years or 900 years, it is replaced with the commercial architecture. Also, dilapidated heritage, that is a different issue. For the government officials, they have only identified 5 structures in Puri which are ASI protected or heritage. Even this structure speaks volumes on something. It might not be heritage. But if we say a structure which is there for 100 years, 100 plus years, which is testimony to the construction time, that speaks something. Now, there is another form of visual nuisance, or I could say pollution. In some structures, you will, this image will be replaced, or it must have been placed there. But there will be a lot of visual merchandising on the facades of the buildings. This is from the Bardhan, and you will see the building which is there for last 100 or 200 years, the architectural elements are hidden. It's not visible to the visitors. Now, there is another issue. We have a building bylaws, very robust building bylaws in Bhubaneswar. And depending upon the road width, the height of the building is decided. But this is the Jagannath temple. It was this entire buildings, all the buildings are constructed after 2016, after the Nobel College. Anyway, all these buildings are destroyed. You could see, going by the building bylaws, all the buildings are illegal. This is the old side. In Lingaraj, all the buildings are old. But all these buildings are new. This non-implementation of building bylaws is another issue for this site. Yes, Odisha experienced a lot of cyclones. Cyclones is an annual guest for us. In the last 20 years, we have received 6 to 7 cyclones. I am talking of 25 years. Somehow we didn't receive cyclone last year, maybe the previous year. But it might come this year. We don't know. What is happening? So this global climate change is affecting the art and architecture of this place. That is the shared reality that we will be facing. Now come to the planning part. I will be very brief here. This was the original Ekamra site in the 22nd century BC. This is the Sisupalgarh. So that is the ancient heritage site or capital of this place. Around 1st or 2nd century, this Bhubaneswar is always called a Chakra Khetra. The layout of Bhubaneswar is circle. So we had one boundary in the northern part, Udayagiri, here one Dhauli. And as the time progressed, this was the site of Ekamra Khetra for 700 years, from 7th century to 13th century. And this is of the border of Ekamra Khetra in 12th and 13th century. As the time progressed, there were some Brahmin settlements. When the king built temple in the 11th and 12th century, he was in the search of people or Brahmins who could do the daily activity. And that was the same time when Kannauj was, the Kannauj that is in UP, it was sacked by the Tughlaq. So a lot of Brahmins, they migrated from here, from the UP to this place on the invitation of the king. So that time we had Brahmin Sasans, Brahmin signs in the surrounding part of the temple. I saw better maps in the Jagannath temple surrounding. Declare a World Heritage Site. I am not talking about a World Heritage structure. It's a World Heritage Site. The entire site might be declared as a World Heritage Site. Now come to Puri. Puri, Shankaracharya visited this site. He declared this site as Char Dham, one of the Char Dham. After that, Jagannath temple was built. And after that, when king brought Brahmins from different parts of the country, mostly from this area, these 8 Brahmin sites were developed. And these 8 Brahmin sites still have their own architecture. Somehow it is still changing. And there were another temple built in 12th century. And there is a river, Musa river. There used to be 6 carts. 3 carts this side, 3 carts other side. There used to be boats which used to later when there was some when there was digging, water accumulated. Those water later become sacred water. We have Bindusagar, we have Narendra Pokhari, where there are a lot of rituals of God happens. Those rituals, those were the water bodies which were formed due to the excavation of soil. Later religious application was added to maintain the purity of the water. Around 18th century when British came, they built a lot of administrative buildings, just like collector office, city jail, or some other buildings. Around 19th century, this railway was constructed. There were few commercial buildings along the road of Marine Drive. And ever since independence, this new site was developed. A lot of schools, residential buildings. But this is the principles behind these 2 temple sites. So here you could see, this is the indication map, how well these roads or these temples are connected with the city. The lines, to make you understand, these roads, this is the Mishra Sai road, this is the Bodkanda road, this road goes to the Loknath temple, and here, these roads, they have the highest integration. So when the king was busy in constructing temples, there are some primary roads, or the roads that we see, the Gandhi Marg. So there are some roads, or the religious roads, they have the highest integration. Choice here. The roads which offers maximum choice to its users. Again here we could see the lines with red or yellow, they have the highest integration. Even here also, the road that connects to a temple, they have the maximum choices. We need to understand this is a map of Puri in 2024. Puri was something that's a circular plan in 1000 years back. These are the newly developed areas. But here you could see the road which is connected to a temple, they have the maximum choice. And one is the connectivity. The same thing could be seen over here. The road that connects the temples have the maximum connectivity. So we are working on it. Hopefully we will publish this soon. Now this is the last slide that I will be showing here. The impact of different rulers. We need to understand each art and architecture is a type of art. They need patrons. They need somebody who would support generously without asking questions. Or might be asking questions, but we need a topic like culture, art. It needs supporters. It needs somebody to fund. So when Guptas were there, that is the time of revival of Hinduism or whatever it is called. During that time, the temple sites were revived. But the major turning point was Somavansis, Eastern Gangas. During these two periods, these temple sites received maximum attention. These 2 temple sites. Somavansi were the Saivites, they developed Bhubaneswar, and Eastern Gangas were Vaishnavas, they developed Puri. There are different impacts of different rulers, and based on their ideology, how the temple sites are developed. Unfortunately, or I could say that was the need of the hour, in 2021, the government of Odisha implemented temple corridor project. In which the surrounding sides of the Jagannath temple and Puri, Jagannath temple and Linga's temple where a lot of buildings are there, a lot of mathas. Some 400 or 500 years old mathas are demolished to create open spaces so that it will provide some comfort, some breathing space to the visitors. Yes, those kind of projects are required. But during that process, some mathas like MR mathas, which are there for 600 years, they were demolished. And this is a heritage lost. That was the project which was implemented here in Banaras, the Kasi Heritage Project. The similar type of project also implemented here. But there is a very huge debate about these projects, the implementation of these projects. Someday somebody might ask. So this is a brief introduction of development of art, architecture and planning in the land of Kalinga. Thank you.
So if you have some questions or some inquiries, observations, please raise your hand. We are ready to take it. There are two options. If you are tired, then we can go for high tea. Or if you have observations,
itself elephant can be Gajapati. Where the elephants are going, one leads them. So different concept presenting otherwise. There is a proof that it is the superstition of a religion or something on otherwise. There is proof or
Actually, I
difference.
interviewed few historians. Again, sir, in history we also.
Gajapati. My question is there.
Sir, okay, one of the hypotheses is a lion is the symbolic element of a symbolic character of 1000 years back. It was the victory of Vaishnava or Saiva, because in Odisha we had multiple sects. Shakti is another sect, but in Shakti temple, Biraja temple, you won't find this kind of sculptures. Supremacy or one lion over elephant. There is another hypothesis. I was discussing with somebody who said like, no, Odisha, in the ruler of Odisha is called Gajapati. The king of Odisha now is also called Gajapati. Gajapati means somebody who rules elephant. So, but that time it was not the same dynasty who was ruling in the 12th century.
The lion is called Pashupati. Animal is maybe stated as elephant. Elephant is also a big animal. But to make the success of the king lion, king of animals, that means victory of Pasuraja, Magendra. Why it is Gajapati, how it is written, that's my question.
Sir, I will answer this.
Sir, at the time of 780, शंकराचार्य ने वेदांत जो फिलॉसफी था उसको अद्वैत वेदांत को उसको एम्फसाइज किया और उसके बाद उन्होंने 4 ईयर द्वारका एंड ऑल ओवर द इंडिया. Then this is the architect in 12th and 14th century AD. I think that is like Buddhism को उन्होंने through तर्क and logic उन्होंने बुद्धिज्म के ऊपर अद्वैत वेदांत को एस्टैब्लिश किया. That is why that idea like the supremacy of Hindu religion on Buddhism in Odisha, that is so there.
My point is only Gajapati, regarding Gajapati.
There is a temple in Bhubaneswar, Brajeshwar temple. There are a lot of references where it is said, it is proven, the Ashokan pillars were reused as shivlings. Now there are a lot of ways to see it. Somebody might say they were reusing the material, somebody might say it was metal. So in architecture, symbolism plays a huge role. Application of color. Why this saffron color is so significant in English? This color, these elements plays a major role and it has to be visible. I could cite one example. What is the okay? Though you could see the Statue of Unity was built 5 years back. Many people criticized why. What is the necessity of Statue of Unity? Similarly, in the 6th century, 7th century, there was construction lot of temples. Somebody might say, what was the necessity of a lot of temples? Because if I am believing some religion, if I feel like my king is believing some religion, and architecture has been used as the physical manifestation of the social, cultural, religious beliefs of the society. Whatever the king believes, that is the belief of the society. It could be king, it could be Basa, it could be whatever it is. So this is one of the hypotheses. I am saying this is one of the hypotheses.
Yeah, so
I think soil for the construction of temple there.
Sir, there is one theology, it says Lord Shiva, because Parvati, for the path of Parvati, he did this Bindu Sagar. But if I say from architecture point of view, if we are making some structure of 66 meter, we need scaffolding, that support system, the bamboo se use hota hai. But 1000 years back, there was no bamboo. I mean, there was no such kind of engineering stuff. So they use soil. Each time they are going newer height or upper height, they are digging soil from here and there. They are putting soil here and there. If there is some digging at some side, water would be accumulated. What was happening that time? People used to go to those water bodies for day-to-day activities. Somebody might be washing, taking bath, in order to add religious sanctity, because that water has to be maintained pure. So this is the logical explanation from the point of construction.
But there are stones only in the temple. So the digging soil and.
So soil is for the supporting the structure, because the labor who is constructing, or not labor, the Maharana, they need a higher platform. This is a Kalas Bangla. Kalas is at a height of 60 meters from the ground. And we need some supporting soil or some supporting scaffold or supports which would work as a base, so that somebody is putting a stone of some 2 ton, 1 ton. So, yeah, this could be one of the experiments.
okay, these are not accidental architectures. These were very much designed, programmed and planned. Every element on the temple is meticulously designed and designated. And let us go back to the Sherpa Shastra, which speaks enormously about the temple programs. If you want to go for that, look at the book Borobudur by Paul Moose, who gives a detailed information about the architecture of Borobudur and how these images were planned on the walls of that particular Mahachaitya. But besides that, wants freedom to the architect and to the sculptors who work, because I have done an enormous study on the functioning of the stone sculpture workshops. If we go back to what Dr. Mohanty was saying, that it could be a possibility to have Gajasimha, but there is also a definitive aspect of Gajasimha both in Konark temple, as well as we find the composite animals like the Vyadas. So there are enormous visuality in all. So what we are here to tell is, like, there could be a possibility of this, and there is a larger chance of having a pushkarini before the temple, because that is a part of the temple construction. Well, it could be architecturally another aspect when one looks at place, or was exclusively designed, because when we look at all the architectural sites all over India, in case of Varanasi also, we find there is a huge amount of water bodies in form of kuas, talabs and pushkarinis in every space. So because that is how you purify yourself before entering into the temple. So there could be lot of explorations can be done into the subject, but I'm really glad that a subject which connected the tradition, the artistic practice of the past, and trying to bring it to the contemporary practice where we have become far more irresponsible and in dealing with these sacred spaces of our identity. Because when he was saying about a couple of things, actually that what hold my sense also was about the renovation, and in the process of renovation removing the matters. Matters were not just a place for survival. Matters were the place for worship. It is what we call in English is a vihara. I mean in Hindi or Sanskrit is a vihara, where they not only stay but they study and they worship. So when you are removing another element in order to create a space for something, perhaps you are trying to tamper with the existing space and architecture. So that's one thing which one needs to understand. Number two, when you were speaking about the heritage site, it's very difficult because now to get a heritage site tag is almost impossible the way we are renovating the cities and the wilderness in which we travel and we try to approach our renovations. They will never give us any identity as a heritage site because we don't respect our heritage. We have never respected our heritage. So, there is a whole lot of things we speak about, there's a whole lot of money that we spend on, but factually, we have become careless. We just look at the temple just to get in and worship. But you know why the temples were made? because there was no television and no reels to play. You believe in a faith, you become a disciple of that faith. When you go to a stupa, when you go to a temple, you spend not the time in the Garbhagriha, but in the Prangana, from where all these sculptures were meant to be seen, to be understood, to be relished, to be appreciated. So, where is our irresponsibility? Our irresponsibility is that we take a lota of water and get inside the Garbhagriha, do our thing and come out, because we don't have time to even look at these images. That is from where the irresponsibility begins. And that is the reason why approaching to be a heritage site is an idea, but really getting it is a dream. It never gets. And then the final thing which I was really very interesting, because he had thrown open a lot of ideas to be pondered on, to be looked at, and the case of pattern. So this is one of the my part study was from patron to clientele, and this shift has really hampered the life of these heritage sites. Patronage was niskapata, nischala, and was like offering something from the heart, so that people can get the benefit out of our love for the heritage, creating heritage. But clientele is not about that. Clientele is based on demand, supply, profit and loss. So when we are evaluating a current space in the contemporary times as compared to the times when they were built, they were constructed and put before the public, they were part of the public space. And by negotiating, by renovating these spaces, we are not only tampering with the sacredness of the space, but also we are trying to damage our belief, our faith in those religions. And what we need now is to get back and stop renovating these sites in order to make it more beautiful, more corporatized. Because more it gets corporatized, less it becomes sanctified. More it becomes commercial. You see, how many people you must have gone to the Chowk area of Kashi Vishwanath corridor. The more you sit and eat and dosa, you will never find that warmth with Baba Vishwanath. Because you are having the same dosa that you can have in any mall. So you don't need a space there, right? So what we have done is that we have diluted that faith in the God, that we have diluted that belief in ourselves, because it is all self-reflective. Temples are not to, just to worship, it is to educate. It is to make you self-reflective. So that is what we are losing over a period of Odia Chair, Bimonthly lecture program, with such a wonderful tapping that it starts putting into your head a lot of ideas where you can start again participating and bringing in new ideas how we can take it further. Thank you so much, Dr. Mohanty, for giving this wonderful lecture to us. And this is really fabulous. And I now